Welcome back, sewing friends. Today we're going to work on a really cute pattern that I have already drafted off for you, and you can print it out instead of having to draft it yourself. This project is one I found by scrolling through Pinterest. I was looking for some inspiration. I wanted something to use my ultra suede for. If you saw me doing my little cleanup of the sewing room video a while back, I have a lot of fabric in my stash that I want to use up, and I really want to use this beautiful ultra suede that is about 30 years old. It's been in my stash a long time, so today we're going to. This pattern, I'll put up a little picture here, is what kept popping up on my Pinterest as it was in Russian. I think that's Russian. I love the look. It's one of those, I'm super enamored with those. It's just a couple folds or a few simple shapes, and somehow you get this really neat design. I also like fabric combinations or color combinations. I love color blocking, so this project is all of those things. But I made a little pattern. I put it in there so you can print it out. It's just 6 pages for the actual pattern. I'll show you how to put it all together. It's not perfect, but it's a little easier than trying to draft it all out on your own, I think. But certainly you could draft it on your own. There's not a lot to it. It's a pretty basic little pattern. Let me show you the fabric we're going to use, and then I'll show you how to make your pattern. This is the ultra suede. It's been in my stash forever. It looks and feels just like a suede, a nice lightweight suede. And I want to line this, so I bought this beautiful buttery yellow to do the lining. Now this is not ultra suede, this is one of those knit suede cloths, and you can see I didn't buy very much. It did come with a few flaws. They're on the wrong side, but there's some black marks. Looks like somebody's pen mark on there. I have washed and dried this, and there's also, I don't know what it is, just some staining of some kind. I'm still going to use it. It's going to be the lining or the inside of the purse. I might be able to, I'm going to just work on how I lay everything out, and maybe I'll put a pocket over it or something. We'll see. But I am going to go ahead and use it. The same with my ultra suede. As I pull this out, because it's ancient, it's got yellowing lines. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and show you the pattern and stuff, and then I'm going to go ahead and take this down and machine wash and dry it and see how much of that comes out. I know I can cut around it because of where it is, but I'm going to go ahead and give it a good wash and dry. That's one thing about ultra suede, is it is washable. I'm going to wash it on delicate, dry it on delicate, and I'll be back with this in a little bit. The other thing we need is some sort of trim, whether it's bias or whatever. Well, I found this. It looks like a patent leather. It's very shiny, but it's a fold-over bias. So I'm going to use this to trim the whole project in. Now this could be done in cottons with a cotton bias. Like, there's a lot of ways you could do this. You could even line it, flip it through so that it's all self-lined. But I love the look of the bias around it. So I'm going to have these 3 colors together, which of course looks like Easter a little bit, but I also just like the bright, springy color combination. And I love that it's in leather, but it's in light colors. I think all of that's super fun. So I'm going to take this down and wash it, and while that's washing, I'm going to show you the pattern process. All right, so here is the pattern all taped together. I'll talk to you about that in just a second. And then there's another sheet that kind of just shows how it looks. This was my inspiration piece. This is not my drawing. I totally just took all of this off the internet. This is my drawing. This is what the 6 pattern pieces look like taped together. This one, I do not know why. It's perfect on the computer, but no matter how, when I print it out, this one just does not line up perfectly. You can fudge it easily though. It is not perfect. I'm just going to show you the corners. This piece, I do not know why. On the computer it's perfect, but when I print it out, this piece right here is not. It's just off. You can see here's my grain line, and then it comes up. But to get all the other things lined up, if this were a garment, it would really matter. Because it's a purse, it does not matter as much. But that's how it is taped together. So I'm going to tell you up front, you may have to do a little fudging and moving to get everything to line up. I just made it so it's 6 pages worth. And then I'll show you how I'm going to trace it off and flip it to get the whole thing. Depending on your fabric, you can either have a seam up here at the top, or you can have it joined at the top with no seam. Depends on how much fabric you have to use. All right, so I have traced my pattern off, and now we're going to slip it around because we want this to sort of have an S shape, if it's all in one. So let me show you what that looks like. I'm going to just pull this up so it attaches right up there at that corner. All right, so here's where they're going to meet. I'm gonna line this up. When we get that lined up, now I can trace this side. I only need one pocket pattern traced, and you can see the shape. So if I stand here, can you kind of see the shape? Now if your fabric isn't long enough, add a little 1/4 inch seam allowance right here, and then you'll cut 2 pieces, making sure to flip it so that you get them going in 2 opposite directions. There we are traced. So you can see the opposite directions of the bottoms of the bag. And now we're ready to cut it. All right, while the other one is washing, I have taped down so you can see how big this is. Doing my best to show the whole thing. It is almost 60 inches if you don't do a seam. So if that won't fit on your fabric, make these 2 separate pieces and put a seam right there. Otherwise, you can get this in about a 1/2 yard of fabric if it's 60 or a little wider. If not, buy a full yard of fabric and plan to cut them side by side. I have the yellow cut out and I'm ready to work on the blue. The stains did not come out, so I'm going to have to be careful with my cutting. I'm going to go ahead and make my double glasses case and a little matching like a little makeup bag to go in this purse too. So I'll make sure and link to at the end so you can see how to make the makeup bag, and I may do a whole separate video on this little dumpling bag. I'm going to just lay my first cutting on top of the other one. They stick to each other really well, and because of how this is sewn, they're going to kind of stay stuck to each other, which you'll see in a minute. So I'm just laying my yellow right on top of the blue. My discoloration is way over here. I can get my glasses case in there, and then I have a piece that's weird that sticks out that I'm going to cut the pocket and the little dumpling bag out of in that corner. So I'll still have a big chunk left that I can work with. All cut out. If you did not cut this in one long strip that's like 60 inches long, but if you have 2 pieces, go ahead and do the little tiny shoulder piece, sew them to each other. Make sure that you get them so they're turning in opposite directions. I'll put another picture up real quick so you can see that S shape that they make. You'll know you've sewn them correctly and you've cut them out correctly if you had to cut it in 2 pieces. Now, if you're doing this in a leather or a suede cloth or something like that, you do not have to line it. You could leave it raw on the inside. I like the lining, so I'm choosing that. You could even line it with something different, like a satin, a brocade. Possibilities are endless. If you want to do an interior pocket that does not shadow to the outside, or if you don't want to lay the pockets on top of each other, then you need to sew on the pockets before we do this section. So you can sew a pocket to the lining and sew a pocket to the outer and then put them to each other. If you're going to do that, I would recommend putting a piece of interfacing behind it. It does not have to be fusible. Because of the type of fabric, fusible sometimes will shadow through or create issues with suede cloth. Not always, sometimes it works great. We want stability and strength behind the pocket. You don't want to do a pocket just to fabric alone. You want to give it a little extra. I do want an interior pocket, however. So before I put this together, I'm going to go ahead and sew my pockets on, and I've been trying to decide, do I want to put the yellow on the yellow, or do I want to put the blue on the yellow and the yellow on the outside? I kind of like the opposing colors. I just do. I just think it's appealing. So that's the next thing that I'm trying to decide. And I can see my yellow has, it has flaws, which is one of the issues that I've been struggling with. And you could cut 4 pocket pieces, 2 of each color, and line your pocket with the opposing color too. That's certainly an option. This type of fabric does not have to be lined. I'm not going to worry about it. So I think I'm going to go ahead and sew my blue pocket to the inside and my yellow pocket to the outside. My interior blue pocket, I'm going to not worry about putting the bias, the pink bias, around the edge on the interior. I'm just going to sew it in. I'm going to fold over the top and top stitch it down. I wanted to sew this with a heavier weight fabric. You're going to set your stitch length long to like a 4. Because this is like leather, it's sort of like tear along the dotted line. If you get too close of a stitch length, it perforates and it will tear. It also will just fall apart. So I'm going to sew the tops of my pockets. I'm going to change the thread that I'm using. For basting together, I'm using a regular sewing thread. For construction, I'm using a heavy, almost like buttonhole thread. It just looks more appealing and more appropriate on this leather, and then I'm just going to top stitch the pocket on. So I'm going to hem the top. It has a nice, that cute little bowl shape. I'm going to fold that down, hem it, and then we'll pin it and top stitch it on. And we're going to do that for both sides. I'm considering for the exterior pocket, putting the bias around it. I am considering that. So I'm vacillating back and forth in my head. I haven't decided yet. I'm going to start with the interior pocket because I know for sure how I want to do it. Here is my lining that I'm going to attach to. This is the wrong side, so this is the interfacing that I've applied. Used my silicone sheet. The thing when working with this, if you iron directly on it, you're likely to leave iron marks. So you want to protect it with either like fabric, a towel, silicone sheet like this, something like that to protect your nappy fabric. If you have a nappy fabric, it's going to take the holes of the iron and you might end up with them permanently in your fabric. We do not want that. That's one of the things you have to be cautious about. So now that we've done that, we're ready to pin our pocket on. Here is our pocket. You can see my ivory thread. This is the heavier buttonhole thread. It's sewing just fine. I've got a nice heavy needle on there. I actually put on a jean needle, but I've got a 90 in there. 100 would also work because I've got such heavy thread. So here is my interior pocket, ready to go. So this is the inside. This is my lining. Here's my little pocket, and I'm just going to be top stitching around. This doesn't fray at all. Now you could definitely pin this at an angle. You can make it smaller. This is just the pocket that came with the pattern that I printed off, or that I copied and made a pattern off of. So I just used what was with the original drawing that I found. So I'm just going to pin this on, going to top stitch around this outer edge, and that's it. And you can see it does not fray. It has a nice cut edge, so it's going to look just fine. So this is how it looks at the sewing machine. I'm going to be just sewing around. I'm really using a basting stitch, 3.9, so you can see how nice and long it is. You just don't want anything too close because it sort of tear along the dotted line with a fabric like this. This one is a knit. This one is more like a leather. So if you're using a true leather, something like that, a longer stitch is appropriate. Make sure you back stitch or do the little triangle at the top to reinforce your pocket, because pockets get a lot of wear and tear. And if the interior pocket, if you wanted to, you could even sew right down the middle and make it 2 divided pockets. Make it how you like. That is so cute, if I do say so myself. Super cute. All right, so there's my pocket for the interior, and it's interface, so it's got some nice weight, and of course this is going to get attached to the exterior, which will make it even more sturdy. So now let's think about our interior pocket. I'm going to go ahead and interface this. I think I'm just going to cut another piece of this same yellow to line it so it'll be sort of self-lined. I think I'm going to do that for this. I think it's just going to be the simplest and easiest. So I'm going to go cut another piece of yellow. The second piece does not need to have the hem at the top that I'm going to be folding down. I do like the look of this deep hem, so I am going to leave that, but I'm going to, I don't want, it's too lightweight for the exterior. This is going to be on the exterior. So let me go cut that, and then I bet you that is loud in my mic. Just thought about that. I'm going to go cut a little lining though, and then put that together, and I'll show you over at the ironing board. So here's my pocket. I interfaced one side of it, and I've got them pinned together, and I've got the one side folded back so I can just top stitch that in. And then if you look, it doesn't line up perfectly. And this is just because of how I cut it, and then I flipped it over. It's not a perfectly symmetrical pattern piece, so when I cut it, it makes not a perfectly symmetrical when I line them on top of each other. But that's okay because it's a pocket and it doesn't have to line up to anything exactly, so I'm going to just trim this out once after I get the lining or the hem in. I'll trim this to make it nice and even, and I wanted to outline it in the bias, so I think I'm going to do that if I can get it to sew nicely. I decided to test a little scrap and adjust my tension. So this is on the top, it always looks good, but on the back the top was popping through. So you can see as I adjusted, I actually had to increase my tension quite a bit on the top, which is counterintuitive, but I'm telling you that's what worked for me. You also might have issues with your bobbin, and you might have to loosen the bobbin a little bit. Sometimes the problem isn't the top tension, but the bobbin tension. Bobbin's a little harder. It's usually a little tiny screw, and you move it just not even a whole turn, not even a half a turn. It's the tiniest amount because the screw only has like 3 little threads in it. For bobbin tension. But anyway, you might do a little scrap and check it before you're ready to sew. I've got my pocket ready to make for the top. All right, I'm applying, I've pinned on my pocket sort of in the middle, and then I'm laying my bias trim, my trim around the edge and stitching it on. So this is how it looks. On the back side, I'm not so concerned if it's not perfect because it's going to be lined, but you can see it actually looks really good. So I'm just slowly going around the edge. It's not up here at the top. I don't have a way to finish off that edge. It doesn't fray, so it's just going to kind of look like that. But that's my little exterior pocket. Going nice and slow, too. This kind of stuff likes to stick to your foot. They do make a Teflon foot, which helps. You can also lay tissue paper on top. Lots of things you can use if you're having problems with it sticking. I also am using my even feed foot, have that engaged, and that really helps. I have my interior pocket, which I really like. I did not do any seam finish on it, but I think it's super cute. So interior pocket. Here is my exterior pocket. I also really like it, except I am finding some issues with my bias or with my trim tape. It's a patent leather, and when I turn corners, so the stitch length looks fine, and then when you do the corners, they look closer together, and it's pretty much, it's not a corner whenever I do a curve. I notice that on all the curves, so it is not my most beautiful stitching. I'm going to leave it alone. I will show you a close-up so you can see how not perfect it is. If this were done with a cotton type bias tape, there would be no issues. It would be super easy. I didn't want cotton tape on my leather look. I really wanted a leather look. And I think if I could have found, I just couldn't find it. I'm sure it's out there. I did not find, I really wanted a suede. I almost cut this blue and made my own trim, which would have been perfect actually. All that said, pockets are in. We're going to head back over to the cutting table real quick and lay this on top of each other, wrong sides together, baste it together first, and then we're going to start applying the bias to this. Pin this together. You cannot pin on this type of trim. It leaves a hole for sure. And that is why these little clips are perfect for that. So I will be using the clips to clip on the trim where needed. So let's head over to the cutting table real quick. And we want these to line up as closely as possible. And you can see as I'm laying this up, I've got this edge is really nice, but you can see how far off this is, and it's pretty jagged. So I'm going to just trim these to get them really close to each other, because I'm going to start bias trimming along here. This whole little thing will get bias trimmed up to about here, and then I will flip this over like this. So I'll start in one corner, start my bias, as it's flat, and then as we get close to here, then I will start catching all 4 layers. I'm a little concerned because this trim is pretty narrow, which is why I'm going to first baste this bag part together at the bottom, because I know it's going to make it go easier and hold everything together. If I had a wider trim, I would probably serge it, just because serging makes everything nice and compact. But because my trim is so narrow, even with a 3 thread, I would be a little worried that it might peak. So I'm going to just stitch this real close together. I could even do like a zigzag that runs off the edge if I wanted to. That might be a really tiny one. So anyway, I'm going to trim up all of these little areas and make it nice and neat, and we'll start putting our bias on. Okay, I've done just a real quick joining. I just basted together really close to the outer edge, the 2 layers, and now I'm going to start adding my trim. I'm going to start on one of these corners. It doesn't really matter, but this is my right side, so I want to make sure this side is up, and I'm going to start right here in this corner, and I'm going to just start adding the trim, and we're going to continue around until we get to around here, and then I'm going to sink my needle and hold it and line everything up. I'm actually going to go ahead and pin it together, but not pin it right up here at the corners. Let me show you real quick. All right, I've just got a few clips. I'm not clipping all the way up. I've got it matched perfectly around the bottom so that this can be free for me to start this wrapping of this. So I'm going to start on this little end. We're going to sew it all the way up and around, and then we come back around on this side. That's when we're going to then catch both sides, I hope, and continue with this. I'm a little concerned because it's just so narrow that it's going to give me a little bit of a problem. We'll find out. But anyway, that's what we're going to do. And then we're going to come up over here, and it's going to actually sew off the edge and come around and then finish. Okay, I have started applying this with my little clips. So I'm clipping on my trim tape, and it just continues around, and then I will go ahead and start sewing. I'm not going to clip it all the way around because it's going to come across and cover this, but we'll start here and I will start stitching it on, and then when I get to this point, I'm going to leave these clipped together so I'll be ready. I will go ahead and cover both layers, which will be 4 layers of the bag, and that will come all the way around. And then when I come off of that bag, I will do single layer around the handle, and that will happen until I get to this edge where they will come back together. So that's the plan. This is going to be the trickiest part right here at the very end, to get that just to lace pretty and smooth, but we can do it. All right, time to stitch. All right, I'm starting my stitching, and it looks great on the right side. I'm still having issues with the wrong side. Look at that, not great. I have adjusted my tension, tightened it up again some more, because what I'm seeing is the top thread is coming all the way through to the bobbin, so the bobbin's quite tight, though not so tight that I don't get that loose thread there. Anyway, gonna keep going around. May have to come back and do some fixing. I almost think I would have been better off. I don't know. It's really the type of trim that I chose in the end. It looks fine on this side though. Not happy with it, but we'll keep working and see if it works itself out. Where I'm at so far, it's very cute. I am having fits, and fits. It's just not sewing beautifully at all. I'm unhappy. I'm going to complete it, and then I'm going to think about it, just so I can show you how it looks completed. But I can tell you, when I do this again, I will choose a different binding. This is so cute, but it is not sewing well, and I'm having so many issues with it, and it does need a heavy thread, and I don't know, I'm just not super thrilled at all with it. So anyway, I'll keep on keeping on. Friends, have you ever started a project and gotten most of the way through and just realized you hate it? You don't like it even a little bit? That's where I am. And I'll tell you why I am unhappy with this project. This stuff right here is making my life. It's making me pretty miserable. And I'm not done. I'm just gonna hold it up so you can kind of see. The look is what I was going for. It's super cute. The stitching looks atrocious. Like I'm almost through stitching, but hate it. So I think I'm going to stop right now, and I'm going to take off all of this pink that I put on, and I'm going to stitch it again with no trim. The trim's cute. It's meant to have a trim. It just looks awful. So at this point, I'm either going to, I don't want to. I could cut my own trim out of this stuff. It would be sort of, it would be more than I want. I just don't want to. I actually would be happier with just the cut edge at this point. So I'm going to rip it all off. So here you go. I'm going to hold it up so you can kind of see this is how it's looking. It could have been cute. I cannot get the stitching to look nice for anything. So it's coming off. I'm going to take the pocket off too, take all the trim off. It's all going to get stitched on without the pink trim. I'm worn out. I actually think I'm trying to decide if I'm even going to finish it tonight or if I'm going to wait and finish in the morning. I'm so unhappy with it. Just unhappy. All right. Does not happen very often. As a matter of fact, I can't remember the last time I worked on something that I just disliked it so much I didn't want to complete it. It's been a long time. Today, it happens to all of us. And today is the day. When I ordered this stuff, I had in my head the thought, it may not be great. I was right. I have a lot of it. I have a whole lot of it. I'm sure I will find something I can do with it. Actually, I know there's a way to glue something like this. Like I see them do it all the time where it's glued on. If I had the stuff to do a glued on trim, I think it would look bazillion times better. It goes on nice. It takes the curves. It's not a bad trim. I'm just really struggling with getting a nice stitch through it with my machine. And it's not the machine's fault. I'm sure it has to do with my thread, the way I've set the tension and having the correct needle. Plus it sticks. This just sticks and does not want to move. It's not sticking at the throat plate. It's sticking on the actual tray. This part here, it just sticks and I'm always having to peel it up. So I probably should have laid down something underneath that to make this so it could slide better. All the things. Anyway, I'll be back later. I'm going to be seam ripping for a while. I will also say I woke up with a migraine. I've taken my migraine recovery medication, which has helped. I still have a headache, but certainly not as bad. But I sometimes feel like my thinking is slower. Like I don't feel like I think as well. When I've had to take my migraine medicine, and I often will live with a migraine rather than take it because I think it affects my thinking. It usually does not affect my sewing. Anyway, I'm going to be seam ripping for a while. I'll see you when I see you. All right, I am trying different things. I really do want to keep the color scheme. Look at how cute that looks together. So I tried a little bit with some super glue, and I've also tried a little bit with this fabric glue. This is the super glued piece. I did not sew it together, sew the edge together like this first on these, so you can see they separate in the middle. The super glue did not work as well as I expected. It just keeps coming loose, and it, even though this is a brand new bottle, it's not coming out well at all. So, not my favorite, but I thought it might be the one. This one is the fabric glue, and it's actually working quite well. So I am going to start with this pocket. I'm going to glue this around, and then I'm going to come in and stitch next to it to stitch this back on, and then I will have the pocket on, and then I'm going to just stitch the bottom of the bag together this is the stitch that I used. I used a really tight zigzag. It's just to make it nice and flat and hold everything together. So that's what I'm going to do for the bag. So when I get there, I'll show you, but I'm just going to be gluing and clipping all the way around to get it to stay. Back in a bit. Went down and got a cute bowl for my clips because it's a pain working from that. This takes 24 hours for complete setup and cannot be washed for 7 to 10 days, which is, I'm not worried about washing it. I do want to be able to sew it together. I don't feel like I can take my clips off for quite a few hours yet. So depending on how well it sets up, it may be tomorrow before I can attach this to the bag and then go ahead and start gluing on the rest of this. So we will see. I'll be back in a bit. I'll come back and check it in a couple of hours and see if I feel like it's secure enough to go ahead and sew on and start gluing on the rest of this. It does get all over the place. I'm using my silicone mat just to keep it from gluing to the table or making a mess, and it works great. It rubs right off the silicone mat. This is my little stick. It's actually a razor, but I'm using the stick end to paint it on to this, and I hope it works. I hope this works. It looks a lot better than the stitching did. I would recommend, if you decide to glue it, to sew your layers together first on the edge before gluing. Otherwise, you kind of get this weird separation between them, and it will hold together a lot better if you do. All right, this is where I'm going to stop for the night. My pocket's been curing for about 2 hours, and then I've gone ahead and started on the bag. I've left it open at the bottom so that I can sew this in, so my lining's not attached down at the bottom of this, so I can put my pocket on. But I can also go ahead and start getting this and letting this set up overnight. I think it'll just make it go faster. Hopefully it'll set real well. So it looks cute with all the little colorful, the colorful clips on it. It kind of looks like the back of a dinosaur to me. Anyway, I'll see you in the morning. Good morning. I'm back at it bright and early, and let's head over to the cutting table and just see how everything dried and see if we can't get that pocket on and get this project finished. So I just took all the clips off. It's not been a full 24 hours, but it's been a long time. It's nice and dry and everything's on there good. And I did part of this and it looks really good too. So I'm going to go ahead and sew this on now. So I'll meet you over at the sewing machine and then we'll come back and finish putting on all of this trim. I have the biases, or the trim, the bias trim is still attached. It's glued up to this point, but I'm not cutting anything off. I'd like to keep it as continuous as possible. And this is the side where the pocket's going to go. And I have a little shadowing through of where the pocket was before, so I can just line it back up. So that's what I'm going to do. I've got my lining peeled back so I can get my pocket laid down on here. Put a couple pins in it to hold it. And I have changed my thread back to just regular sewing thread. I'm going to be sort of stitching in the ditch or right next to the trim, the pink trim, so it sort of disappears. I don't want to stitch onto the trim this go round because I just know it doesn't stitch down that great. It tends to leave, it sticks to my machine, it sticks to the foot, lots of things. All right, let's get this stitched in. And I could even use a zipper foot to stitch right next to. All right, this is how I'm setting up to sew the pocket. Here is my trim. You can see all the little dimples where the clips were on it, but that will start to heal and recover a little bit. And I've got my zipper foot on so I can get right next to the trim, but not on it. We're just going to stitch right next to that trim, and this zipper foot makes it a lot easier. This is how it looks on the other side. Okay, that looks good. I'm gonna give it a little haircut and I'm gonna put on my straight stitch foot. Ta-da. So now I'm going to sew all the layers of the bag together down here so I can continue with my bias, with my trim. So I'm gonna line everything up and stitch it. I actually think I'm going to, I put my straight stitch foot on, but I think I'm going to do a tiny zigzag around the outer edge. It'll just compress everything and hold it well and make it fit better. I'm gonna go grab my clips. My little bowl of clips. Whoop. I think I mentioned that I never use clips, and it's because a lot of times I'm sewing with fabrics that it's just not appropriate for, but I'm telling you, I'm loving the clips for this project. They were invaluable. All right, let's get to stitching, and all I'm doing is stitching the layers of the bag together, starting like right here and around so that it's the bottom where the two handles kind of meet. And then I'm going to come and cover that with this trim. Sorry it's so dark. I haven't even turned on any lights in here. I'm just sitting here sewing by the light of the window, which I love to do. That's how I sew a lot when I don't have a camera on, and I didn't even think to turn the light on, so you're getting some sort of dramatic mood lighting today. All right, let's sew. This fabric likes to stretch just a wee bit. Both of them do, both the ultra suede and the suede cloth that is knitted. So it helps to have the even feet put on, and you can see how it's starting to push. So I'm easing it back in as I go, trying to keep, I don't want to wrinkle. I do want to ease it. Here it is. Clips all around. That's the back. That's the front. I'm going to leave it to rest for a little bit, and I'm going to go downstairs and clean my house, and hopefully it'll be done and I can come back and show you the completed project. Well, here it is.
It's not disgusting, but it's not at all as good as I would like it to be. The glue's working fine, but it's left residue that I think I will be able to come in and brush off some of it. Also, see if I can get close enough for you to see. Can you see little tiny dents from the clips? That's sort of an issue too. All right, I hung it in a very weird way over the dress form, but I couldn't keep it on the shoulder because I didn't pin it up. I'll show you some close-ups. Here's where I've attached the pocket. Don't love it. Here's the inside pocket. All fine. It's fine. It's fine. Don't love it. Looking kinda, looks like a big baby bib hanging that way, doesn't it? All right, I've just laid it flat so you can see it better. There are some creases in the fabric that I might be able to steam out, I'm not sure. I definitely like the bag shape. I think it's super cute. It's actually kind of short on, like you couldn't crossbody this. It would hang over the shoulder fine though. It would make a shoulder bag. It would be cute to throw your book or something in. I can set my camera here so you can kind of see the size it sews up. That's the bag. It's fine. Not my greatest project. The pockets are all fine. From what I had in my head to how it was executed is far away. I really think I would like to try this again with a suede soft trim. This is so stiff on here, and gluing it did work. I didn't use the best method. It was hard to use. It stuck to my fingernails. It's actually ruined my nail polish. I've got to go redo my nails. It stuck to everything. The silicone sheet was the way to go. So here I am in the mirror. You can see the size. It's actually, I like the size. I like the pocket placement. All of that's fine. It looks, I'm getting baby bib vibes big time though at this point. Oh well. Well, thanks for sewing with me and seeing I'm considering this sort of a fail. See you next week for another fun video. Hopefully it works out better than this one.